Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you for joining us for one of our talks today. Today, we are joined by the wonderful Karen Cinorre, who's the writer and director of the movie Mayday. And I wanted to start by talking about the influence of mythology in the overall narrative and the way that you've told this story, because it's not something which just influences the narrative structure and these characters, but it's also, there's a real kind of ethereal feel and tone and voice to the film as well. And so when you first started to think of that, as the overarching way in which you wanted to approach this period piece war set drama out in beautiful Croatian landscape countryside. How did that influence a lot of the creative choices that you were making at every single stage in wanting to create that feel and that atmosphere?
Yeah, I guess myths don't really look like anything in particular. So you can kind of, when you hear a myth or read it or have a sense of it in history, it's kind of what you dream up in your own head. So I love the myth of the sirens from the time I first read about it. And it's for me to dream up, really. And I think myths are great in that way because they don't have a set way of being. You can kind of mythologize lots of things and dream them up in a lot of ways. And mythology is inside our culture, inside ourselves. It is like a dream state. A mythological being is kind of a wondrous being that can take any shape and form, and it's really fun to play with. So playing with mythology gave me a lot of freedom to do something very beautiful and lush and filled with movement. And the kind of stories I like to tell have a lot of beauty in them and a lot of movement. So it was fun for me.
I love that you were bringing up that idea of kind of a slight dream state because it also transcends into the way that we view some of these characters and the essence of them. And so if we take Mia Goth's character, Marcia, she really comes across as someone who can exist both in a real world setting, but also has a slightly ethereal, otherworldly sense to her. And so how did that shape her in terms of the way that you developed her as a character, but also in working with Mia on that type of performance where it balances and straddles these two spaces in one moment?
Yes. What was so exciting about these characters, writing them, casting them, and working with them, is that I felt like I really wanted them to have one foot in reality firmly on the ground. And then they had space to be something more cosmic, more mythological, maybe ethereal, maybe just, I feel like it was me is very mercurial. Like she changes on a dime. She has so many facets to her. So I felt like letting them have this other dimension of mythology gave me so much room to explore the the real multi-dimensionality of women and girls. I don't see these as fantasy creatures. I see them as really complex. I see them as portraits of people that I've known and loved and admire, and who go inside for deep inner struggle. And it just has a lot of facets to it, and we don't often get to see them all. So I really enjoyed being able to show sort of the yin and yang of the real and the mythological.
And I also wanted to talk about Grace Van Patten's character, Anna, because she is pulled into kind of like this other space, this other dimension, and she never leads from a place of fear, even though she's being put into uncomfortable positions. And she's kind of learning to become a little bit more external as a character as well. And yet it always leads from a place of curiosity and interest every time she's shown something new or taught something new, or just the way that she views the world differently. And was it important to you that when you were crafting every single scene, that it always was a journey of curiosity and discovery, and that was the genesis of where she was coming at a lot of these situations from?
Absolutely. It wasn't a fearful journey for her. It was an inner journey that she needed to take. It's absolutely crucial for her survival. And I think she went on the journey, she goes on the journey because she's in a fearful place. And as the idea of traveling to somewhere new through a portal, meeting people who want to join up with her and help her, it was like, to me, it was like, oh, that fear can all go away now. You're with us now. You're safe. You're with women like you, and you don't have to have that fear anymore.
And when she does kind of take that step through that portal situation, what are the ways in which you really wanted to think about filming scenes differently so that there is that real, sensory experience for the audience in stepping into a different space and different time?
Mm. Well, color is one. The color takes on a vibrancy, and I like I like the eye to be kind of excited by the colors in that place. We didn't go for something highly artificial, but just that everything's very vivid was important. And also, I'd say the music. So the reality part of the film, there's hardly any music. It's very, very subtle. It's hardly even music. It's more like sound effects. You can't tell which is which. And then when she goes there, the world blossoms into the world of the sirens, which is full of music. And Colin Stetson really understood that and really wanted the Mayday world to be one filled with incredible, incredible music. Caroline Shaw did the song of the voices of the sirens. So they gave it this entire new heightened level of dazzle. I wanted it to be dazzling for Anna to go on the journey, and a place that was so different from her dreary reality.
You also use all of those same tools in terms of the way that you use color and light, and particularly music and sound design, when it comes to the space of building tension later in the narrative as well, where there's a lot of kind of searing reds and searing oranges. And then there's a moment where there's music and there's kind of an undercurrent sound underneath it that almost just sounds like a really continuous ringing in your head when you're watching it
Yeah,
as
in the
well.
tunnel. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so, how did you want to pull all those different mediums together to really create that sort of sensory feeling of discomfort within the audience?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I find color to be very emotional. So it's a great scene you're talking about. It was really hard to find a place for her to drive her car where we felt like it was as emotional as she would feel. It's sort of like her remembering her past life, her real life, and it being a claustrophobic place of a lot of strong feelings. And yeah, when we found that tunnel, we just thought, oh, that's such an inner world, and the color so rich, and it's closing in on her, yet she's traveling. So yeah, building tension is sort of like building a piece of music. I think it's the same thing. You let things expand and go on, and then shorten them. And you have to make things soft to be able to make things loud, and you want them to ebb and flow, sometimes build, and then you do a denouement. And you can do that with color, and you can do it with sound design, and you can do it with the pacing of the dialogue, and you can do it with editing. It's such a rich medium for working with tension. And of course, you have your actors who can be filled with tension and emotion. And yeah, I can't think of a single element in the film that doesn't contribute to that movement.
And on the opposite end of tension, there's the moment where Anna's walking through a field and sees a whole group of soldiers. And it almost feels like we're breaking the fourth wall because all of a sudden there's music that we know she's hearing as a character. And, everybody kind of breaks into dance a little bit. And it's both like an interesting tone and shift that has to work so specifically. And there's a lot of delicacy in the way that you can include scenes like that as a filmmaker, because it has to carry the audience with them. Otherwise, you completely lose them at that point. And so how did you set about making sure that that felt really consistent with the rest of the film as the way that it flows in and out of it, both when you were filming it, but also with a lot of the specificity that comes in the editing of that scene?
Hmm. It was very important to pick the right song. It's a Liberace song. I think we tried Love is Blue. I think we tried every incarnation of that song. We tried all different kinds of, the song had to have a levity to it, and almost they had to match the score yet not match the score. It was just a lot of trial and error. We knew we had the song kind of at first because we loved it, but we always thought we would have to take it out and use something else. But we never took it out. Nothing ever matched the lightness, and it also has sort of a wink to it. It has sort of a you're not in Kansas anymore kind of a feeling. It just it's tonally right, and it even blends right into Colin's music after that. It seems seamless. So sound wise, that. And then with the editing, we just went full on dance number. So I actually think because the music is so well placed and seamless, that you could do that. You could really go into, um, you know, uh, dancing territory, just Bugsley Berkeley, and just go for it, because it wasn't too much outside the film. It felt stitched in.
There's also a handful of scenes for different reasons narratively where there's camera work within the water. And sometimes it's, a peaceful place for these women. Sometimes it's a place of stress for them as well. And there's a scene later on where the character Anna is like underwater for a moment and then we see her coming up to the surface. And one of the things that really struck me about a scene like that is you're never just setting the camera up once within these scenes and going, oh, the easiest thing is just to like get the camera, get the shot. You're still playing around with angles and the way that you're filming those scenes and choosing different angles based on what you want those scenes to tell us narratively, up against the challenges of what shooting within water also carries in itself. And so what was that journey of really navigating a lot of those scenes and making sure that they did all tell a different specific visual story?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question. And it's true. A lot of times scenes aren't in the water entirely. It's a moment. You get a moment in the water. But yeah, we have a lot of plot points taking place in the water. Um, for me, it's very much a film about her relationship to water and our relationship to the ocean and the sirens and the mythology of the world, land versus sea, fire, air, earth, gunmetal. It's a very elemental film. So it's natural for me to want to put entire scenes in the water. Felt right when I was writing it. And then, of course, you're faced with the reality of the ocean and its unpredictability. So scenes changed in terms of their tone. Um, a little bit in the ocean, and we had more control. We did a day shooting in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and luckily, Grace is a surfer, and we were very aware of her abilities, but I couldn't have imagined what she's capable of doing in water until I actually saw it on set. It's not like we had a water audition. We couldn't believe it. We were watching the monitor, and the underwater camera man goes with her, and she's just like this water ballerina actress miracle. I don't really know how else to put it. So we could, and Mia was fearless in the water too. All the girls are very fearless. So, and they felt safe because we were keeping them quite safe. We had great, diving, really wonderful diving safety men surrounding them at all times. So they felt safe to just be free in the water and act it out. And I just love it in there because I like anything in film that sort of defies gravity and can float and feel light, like a little bit of helium, in a movie, instead of it being downtrodden, especially if you're talking about things that are heavy in life. And I think Anna's journey has been quite heavy. It's nice to put her in a place where she can float a little.
And you also filmed this in Croatia, and there's such beautiful landscapes and settings. And how much did the settings really influence the way that you wanted to frame a lot of scenes once you had your locations, particularly with the fact that you're telling the story with all of these mythology elements and you're telling everything within, when there are effects and there are any added elements, it's all in camera. Everything that we're seeing is actually physically there in all of these locations in every way.
Yes. So Croatia is a character, really, because it's the world. And we're an independent feature. We couldn't go build a world, but I'm glad because Croatia is the best possible world to film for me. The forests are like nothing I've ever seen. They're so windblown from the sea that the trees are all uprooted and ghostly white, and it looks like a war has taken place there. I didn't have to do anything. I just didn't have to build that. I didn't have to. It has the character of a place where so much has happened and the elements are at work and the forces are strong. It's a dynamic landscape, and so dynamic that the winds destroyed our submarine set after we had finished shooting on it. But it's, you know, it's a churning place. And it created the energy of the film. And we knew that when we scouted it, we knew it was the right place.
And when it came to working with the main cast on this film, you've mentioned how, each actress really came into this project and needed something slightly different from you as a director in the space that you were creating. And what were those slight nuanced spaces that you really found yourself creating and shaping for each of them?
So some of the actors needed to go inside themselves and be quiet. And talking to them at a certain point is not going to help. And they're very clear with me about that. And I'm very clear with them. And we had this nice clarity of what we needed. Sometimes an actor will say, I need to know the tone of my voice in this scene. Do you want it higher, lower? They're questioning when they have a question, when they're struggling, they ask me. They ask me what it is they need. And they trusted me enough, and I trusted them enough because I think I cast it well, that they were already embodying the language very well. The table read went very well. They had the song. They sounded like the character. They had the rhythm of the dialogue. So then you're just trying to get back to that when you get on the chaos of a set. And some people just need less noise, more inner things, and some people need more things from the outside to help them bring the character to them.
And in working with Grace in particular, because her character Anna does start from, that slightly more insular place and then becomes more external in the way that she's able to express herself and the confidence that she finds in herself once she steps into this world, and there's more fearlessness as well. And we need to look at, that's really physically embodied in her performance. Is that something that the two of you talked about, that trajectory and that journey in that way? Or, was it kind of a natural build as you were filming a lot of these scenes together?
No, we had to do it very intentionally because you don't shoot in order, right? So she's wild and free and abandoned one day, and the next day she's super heavy, and she had to act with her whole body. All the actors did, and every actor does, really. So it wasn't like Grace as a person got to go on this journey from heavy to fearless to to empowered. Each day she had to find that character again in the place where she is in the journey. So a lot of our work is making sure she's in the right place and that we're situating her in the right frame of mind and that we capture it at the right point. And so much of that is physicality. And so much of what I love about Grace is that her incredible physical presence. And she has such an awareness about what her body is doing, where she's putting it a precision to her, which was incredibly fun to work with, amazing to watch, and it was just striking. It was fun.
Yeah. And I came across something where you were mentioning a piece of advice that you were given once about never making your choices smaller and never making like your creative vision smaller. And I feel like when you watch this film, it really feels like a film in which you didn't compromise your creative vision, and that was kind of the central driving force in getting this film made. And I know that came with certain challenges along the way in terms of finding producers to collaborate and getting the financing together. But, was that something that throughout the entire process, you had certain things that you just knew were creatively non-negotiable to yourself in terms of the way that you wanted to tell the story on screen?
Yeah, all of it. I didn't want to compromise anything. But I think that's the strength of the film, because its uncompromising nature is very much like the uncompromising nature of these complicated women and men in the film. And everyone who came to the story, the actors, the DP, our producers, everyone, our crew, our production designer, our AD, everyone wanted to tell this story very, very badly. It felt so personal because it had not been diluted to be more pleasant, or easy. It was a pure utterance, unadulterated, utterance of all of these feelings that come out of a woman's internal battle with violence and taking her place in the world and struggles of life and death. And the people who wanted to do this project cared about those things a lot and were not afraid of the complexity of it. And so they relished it and they dug in, and we were able to kind of go farther than I ever imagined. And I was really, really glad I never compromised the vision.
And through your journey in filmmaking as well, you've also started your own company, Queen's Army. And I think it's great that it sounds like this isn't a company that was launched just to create your own projects, but that it's really about the filmmaking community at large. And you've also mentioned that part of the remit is getting projects made from within the special needs community. And wanted to ask you about that specifically in the ways that you've seen the necessity for that and what you're hoping to be able to do to elevate stories like that. Because when we talk about diversity and inclusivity within the film industry, that's one of the communities that very frequently doesn't become part of the discourse in the conversation and gets left out.
Absolutely. So a woman, Joan Hill, that I know who has Asperger's, wanted to make a film, and it was such a great idea. So I was happy to help get made. And I realized, well, I didn't just realize, but it is so hard to get a film made. And those of us who get access to it at some point, we're such a rare breed. It's almost like nobody gets to do this. You have to be in the right place at the right time. You have to have gotten to a place. It's just crazy. You need to have some sort of financial stability to even start imagining that you could ever do this. I mean, of course there are exceptions, but plus being a woman was quite challenging. It's getting a lot better now, which is exciting. People of color, special needs people I've worked with my whole life, and my sister has special needs, and they don't have access to much, and they're not listened to, and people try not to look at them. And so when I got an opportunity to help produce a film by this brilliant woman in that community, I just couldn't wait and it means everything. There's all these stories to be told, all these voices, all this filmmaking that would be so exciting for us to see, because we don't get to see these internal lives, and I want to see them. So yeah, it's really thrilling to be able to see some of it get done. I want to do more of that.
I think that's so wonderful. And it makes me so excited, not just to see the next work that you create as a filmmaker, but also the projects that become possible because of your involvement and support within the industry. And just want to thank you so much for taking time to share all of this, Karen.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.